Hello and welcome to Pickleball Therapy, the podcast dedicated to your pickleball improvement. Hope you're having a good week out there. This is podcast number 52, episode number 52. If you do the calendar the way we do it, that's the 52nd week, meaning it's 1 year of the podcast. So what we're going to do this week is I went back and I looked at the at our archives, right? All the episodes that we have, they're all still available for you if you haven't listened to them. But I went back and looked at them, and there was a few that jumped out at me. A few of the podcasts jumped out at me. So what I figure we'll do this week is let's highlight some of those. We'll summarize some of the tips in there in one podcast for you, and kind of it's a little bit of a look back, but with some actionable items that you can take away from you or take away with you in this week's podcast. So that's what we're going to do in this week's podcast. Stay tuned. Pickleball requires a lot of eye-hand coordination. You're probably spending time on the hand part of the coordination, but what about the eye part? If you're ready to train your eyes to gain earlier ball recognition and better tracking, and improve your defensive chances, then consider trying out our preferred visual training partners, Visual Edge. The experts at Visual Edge have developed visual training programs used by top professional athletes, and this training is now available to you. Let me share with you some of what our players are saying about the program. I feel more confident doing a game day session before playing. I notice a big improvement in my tracking, blocking, and reaction time. I'm getting my paddle on and safely returning many more shots that are hit hard at me, particularly to my feet. I'm a lot more focused on the ball and its flight. You too can take advantage of Visual Edge's vision training programs and improve your performance on the court. If you act now before September 6th, there's some great Labor Day specials that Visual Edge is running. You can take advantage of those right now. Use our Pickleball specific link and you'll get an additional savings on the plan that's right for you. Visit visualedge.com/VIPickleball for the special offer. Visual Edge is VIZUAL edge.com/VIPickleball and you get the special offer. I'll include the link in the show notes. This is a Labor Day offer and it ends on September 6th, so check it out soon. As I was looking through the podcasts, the archives of our episodes, one of the first ones that jumped out at me was episode number 3. The heading of that one, or the title of that one, is Play the Right Game for You. And I think that's something that we're pretty consistent with in this podcast. And when we talk to you is, at the end of the day, you need to do what's right for you. What's right for you physically, what's right for you mentally, what's right for you in terms of your objectives. And, we give you some suggestions, some tips and things like that you can add to your pickleball game, add to your lives. But at the end of the day, it's your decision to make, whether you want to add those to your game and also whether it's right for you. And so, it's really important to not play pickleball because of what I say or anybody else says, but because of what you want, in other words, what you want to accomplish. Where you can use, information that you receive from someone like myself or CJ or VIPickleba or something like that, or, YouTube channels, is you've made the decision, I want this in my game, or I want to do this. And then use us as a tool basically to help you get to where you want to be with your game. As opposed to, we say, this is important, right? Or this is something that we think should be added. And you just say, okay, I'm going to add it to my game because I heard it from Tony or CJ. So at the end of the day, I think that the important thing here is play the game the way that's right for you. Do what's right for you in your game. Don't worry so much about what others think, including us. Basically what's right for you. And then we'll be there for you to help you develop into the pickleball player that you want to be. So I thought that episode was a pretty important one. It kind of sets the tone for a lot of what we talk about in this podcast. The other series was we did an interview with Coach Peter Scales called Mental and Emotional Training. Originally, when I spoke with Coach Pete, the idea was 15 or 20 minute interview because our podcasts are usually 12, 15 minutes. And we ended up chatting for, I want to say it was close to an hour. And so what I did was I took our conversation and I broke it up into parts, right, for our podcast. So I think it's actually 5 episodes. But episode 9 was the first one. And so if you haven't listened to those, that mental part of the game, the emotional part of the game is so important. It can either, if you look at it, I think in a healthy manner, pickleball can add a lot to your lives, adds a lot to our lives, but that's when we're looking at it, healthily. But it can also be, there's a downside, right? Potential downside, meaning, if you start looking at it from the other, negatively, right? So if you start letting it impact you negatively, pickleball can drag you down. It can make you upset. It can make you, think about, to have negative thoughts and things like that. So that mental emotional part of the game is really important, and it's something that is learnable, right? It's something that you can improve, something you can work on, and I think listening to that series is really important. So we've tried to have a good bent in this podcast with the mental side of the game. We tried to really talk about that, talk about how it impacts not just yourself on the pickleball court, but also it impacts your life. So if you haven't checked those out, highly recommend that you check those out. Another one that jumped out was the title was Setting Reasonable Expectations. Kind of goes hand in hand with the play the right game for you I mentioned earlier in the mental and emotional training. So when you're talking about setting reasonable expectations, you're talking about, again, what's right for you, and also being reasonable in terms of where you are, and not just in your life, but also in your game. In other words, have you spent thousands of hours on the court drilling a shot? If not, and you miss it, then okay, you miss a shot. Life, no big deal. But if you haven't been spending thousands and thousands of hours on it, then maybe don't have an expectation that you're gonna hit the shot or play the game in a way that a player who has spent thousands of hours doing that will. So thousands may be too many, but you know what I mean. Set reasonable expectations for yourself when you're out there, and I think that's really important. So in kind of when you go back and you look at the episodes as a whole, right? You kind of get an idea that what we're trying to do is we're trying to provide for you a framework. We're trying to give you a framework within which to improve in the game, but also enjoy the game. So, for instance, we've been talking recently about the 3 pillars of pickleball. We broke it down into 3 pillars: the mechanical pillar, the thinking pillar, the conceptual pillar, and then the third pillar is the athletic pillar, right? And so, we have episodes discussing each one of those, trying to give you a better sense of how to build your pickleball self, right? What to focus on, how to how to frame that out. So it's a framework idea. We also talked a lot about fundamentals as opposed to red herrings or shiny objects, that we pursue in pickleball that aren't really going to get us where we want to go. Whereas focusing on the fundamentals is really the key. So we spend a lot of time on fundamentals in the podcast and giving you fundamental metrics and things like that hopefully help you accomplish your objectives if that's what you want to do. If you want to improve, we're trying to give you the tools. And then, some keys to success, right? Some big ticket items, some big picture things that hopefully can help you improve as a player, and also just, again, improve your life. We talk about that, not just, we focus on pickleball. That's the focus of the Pickleball Therapy podcast, of our podcast. But, we don't want to just stick to pickleball. It's an important part of our lives, but there's a bigger picture, and to the extent that we can extend out some of the concepts that we talk about in pickleball to the rest of our lives, then, more the better. And at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is give you some positive, constructive tips, suggestions, things like that to help you. The phrase we like to use is to become the best pickleball player that you can be. We think it's not fair or not reasonable to say, to become a 4.0 or to become a 4.5 or to be whatever. Each one of us has our own pickleball path or pickleball journeys to walk, to live, and what we're trying to do is be a positive tool that you can use, or a positive voice that you can listen to help you achieve, again, your objectives and become the best pickleball player that you can be, because that is all that we have control over. So, that's been our first 51 episodes of Pickleball Therapy. Have been really focused on those areas. If there's ever anything that we're doing that you think we can improve on, we're always always open to suggestions. You can always reach me at Tony@wearepickleball.com. It's always in the show notes. If I know I speak fast, so sometimes it's hard to write down, but it's in the show notes if you ever want to get a hold of us. And we certainly appreciate y'all tuning into the podcast. We appreciate the ratings that y'all share about the podcast, and we also appreciate y'all sharing it with your friends. As you know, at the end of every podcast, we say that if you enjoy the podcast, your friends, if you enjoy the podcast, your friends probably will too. So really appreciate your support this last year, and we look forward to another year of Pickleball Therapy podcasts and continuing our work to improve, to grow, and to enjoy pickleball. Be well, and we'll see you next week.